Yemen, the Houthis sit directly on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, one of the two choke points that control shipping in and out of the Red Sea. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has spent decades fortifying positions along the Israeli border. In Iraq, Shia militias operate near American bases, complicating any U.S. logistics or ground supply chain. Each of these forces serves as both a deterrent and a lever. What this network does is force the United States to defend in multiple directions simultaneously, while Iran can calibrate pressure in any one direction without fully committing. That asymmetry of focus multiplied over months of conflict is exactly how a smaller power wears down a larger one. And for 20 years, Iran was preparing specifically for this scenario. The 12-day exchange last June, when Israel and the US struck Iran and Iran struck back, gave Tehran a real-world test of how American and Israeli air defenses actually performed under pressure. 8 months later, Iran launched its next major campaign with that data in hand. Here's the part of this conflict that most coverage has missed, and it's hiding in plain sight on the map. The Gulf Cooperation Council countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, are desert nations. The Arabian Peninsula gets less than 100 millimeters of rainfall per year across most of its territory. That is below the minimum threshold for rain-fed agriculture. These countries cannot meaningfully feed themselves, and they have almost no natural fresh water. Desalination solves the water problem. Coastal plants convert seawater into drinking water and supply approximately 60% of the GCC's fresh water. Riyadh, a city of 10 million people, sits deep in the interior, fed by pipelines from those coastal plants. If those plants go offline, the city's water reserves run out in roughly 2 weeks. On the food side, the GCC imports roughly 85 to 90% of its food supply. The shipping routes for almost all of it pass through either the Strait of Hormuz or the Bab el-Mandeb, both of which are now under active pressure from Iranian or Iranian-aligned forces. What Iran is doing, and this is the part that reframes the entire conflict, is not trying to defeat the American military in direct engagement. It is applying pressure to the physical infrastructure that keeps the Gulf states alive. The water plants, the food routes, the energy terminals force those countries into crisis, and the United States faces a choice between an open-ended military commitment to sustain them or watching its most important regional partners destabilize from within. The geography has always looked like this. What's changed is that Iran now has the forces in place to actually exploit it. All of the pressure, the munitions math, the proxy network, the GCC vulnerability leads to a single strategic problem that the United States has not yet found a way around. Destroying a government from the air alone has never worked. Not in Vietnam, not in Serbia, not in Libya, not in Iraq. Regime change requires controlling territory, and controlling territory requires ground troops. If the United States is genuinely committed to changing the Iranian government, the only military path to that outcome runs through a ground invasion of a mountainous country of 90 million people, one that has spent 2 decades preparing specifically for that scenario. That creates a trap with no obvious exit. Air power alone cannot achieve the stated objective. Ground invasion is militarily catastrophic and has no public or congressional support. Negotiation is the third option, but Iran already watched one nuclear deal, signed in 2015, get torn up by the next US administration 3 years later. From Tehran's perspective, any agreement a future president can dissolve with a pen isn't a guarantee worth making concessions for. The trap isn't just military, it's geometric. Every exit leads somewhere worse. The United States hasn't lost this war, but the forces we just walked through, the munitions math, Iran's 20-year proxy network, the physical vulnerability of the Gulf states, and the ground trap all point in the same structural direction. And underneath all of it is a geographic reality that existed long before this conflict started and will exist long after it ends. Iran's position on the map gives it leverage over routes, the infrastructure, and the energy systems that the modern global economy depends on. That leverage didn't appear today. It's been there for centuries. What changed is that Iran now has the military tools to actually use it. The question worth sitting with: if you were designing a strategy to pressure a superpower without fighting it directly, and you had access to Iran's geography, would you do anything differently than what's happening right now?